The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Riverside Academy as Lisa walked down the familiar hallway toward her classroom. She had been teaching here for 6 years now, and every single day still felt like a gift. Working with special needs children wasn't just her job. It was her calling, her purpose, the thing that made her jump out of bed even on the coldest Monday mornings. She unlocked her classroom door and flipped on the lights. The room was exactly how she liked it. Colorful posters on the walls, shelves filled with books and learning materials, and her favorite corner with the old, upright piano that the school had given her last year. That piano had changed everything for some of her students. Lisa set her coffee cup down on her desk and glanced at the note the principal had left her on Friday. A new student was joining her class today. His name was Ethan, 12 years old, and he was blind. The file mentioned that he had lost his mother 2 years ago and lived with his father. There wasn't much else in the notes, which Lisa found a bit odd. Usually parents filled out pages and pages of information, but this file was thin, almost empty. She didn't have much time to think about it because right at 8:30, there was a gentle knock on her door. Lisa looked up to see a well-dressed woman in her 50s standing with a young boy. The boy had dark hair that fell slightly over his eyes, and he held a white cane in his right hand. His posture was straight, confident even, but there was something careful about the way he stood. "Good morning," the woman said with a professional smile. "I'm Helen. I'm here to drop off Ethan for his first day." Lisa walked over immediately, her voice warm and welcoming. "Hello, Ethan. I'm Miss Lisa, and I'm so happy you're here. Come on in." Ethan turned his head toward her voice and gave a small smile. It wasn't a big grin, but it was genuine. "Thank you, Miss Lisa." Helen handed Lisa a folder. "Here's some additional information. If you need anything, my number is inside. I handle most of the scheduling and school matters." Then she bent down slightly toward Ethan. "Have a good day. I'll be here to pick you up at 3. And just like that, she was gone. Lisa noticed she didn't hug him goodbye or ruffle his hair. It felt formal, almost like a business transaction. She pushed the thought aside and focused on Ethan. "So Ethan, how about I show you around the classroom? I'll describe where everything is, and you can feel free to explore." For the next 20 minutes, Lisa walked Ethan through every corner of the room. She described the layout, let him touch the different materials, and introduced him to the piano in the corner. The moment his fingers brushed against the keys, something changed in his expression. "You play?" Lisa asked. "A little," Ethan said quietly, but his fingers were already moving across the keys, finding middle C without hesitation. "Would you like to play something?" Ethan hesitated for just a second, then nodded. What happened next left Lisa completely stunned. His fingers danced across the keys with a skill that didn't match his shy demeanor. The melody was beautiful, haunting even, and it filled the entire classroom with emotion. When he finished, Lisa realized she had been holding her breath. "Ethan, that was incredible. Did you learn that from a teacher?" "My mom taught me," he said softly. Before she died, Lisa's heart squeezed. She knew loss. She knew what it felt like to have a hole in your life that nothing could fill. She must have been an amazing teacher. "She was the best at everything," Ethan replied, and for a moment his face looked older than 12. Like he had lived through things that forced him to grow up too fast. The rest of the morning went smoothly. Ethan was incredibly bright. While Lisa worked with him on a Braille reading exercise, she noticed he was reading at a level far beyond his age. When she gave him a math problem just to assess where he was, he solved it in his head faster than she could write it down. "You're really good at math," Lisa said. Impressed. "My dad used to help me with it," Ethan said, back when he had time. There it was again. That sadness in his voice. Lisa wanted to ask more, but she didn't want to push. Not on the first day. During lunch, Ethan sat quietly, eating the meal Helen had packed for him. Lisa noticed he didn't talk much to the other students, though they were curious about him. One girl asked him about his cane, and he answered politely, but he didn't try to make friends. He seemed content in his own world. After lunch, Lisa decided to let Ethan spend some time with the piano again. She had other students to attend to, but she kept one ear on the music he was creating. It was different from the morning piece. This one was lighter, almost hopeful. At 2:30, Lisa was helping Ethan pack up his things when she happened to glance out the window. Across the street, parked under a tree, was a sleek black car. The windows were tinted so she couldn't see inside, but something about it caught her attention. It had been there all day. She had noticed it that morning and assumed it belonged to a parent waiting for a meeting, but it was still there. Ready to go, Ethan? Lisa asked, shaking off the odd feeling. Yes, Miss Lisa. As they walked to the front entrance together, Lisa saw Helen pulling up in a different car. She helped Ethan into the back seat and they drove off. But as Lisa turned to go back inside, she noticed the black car was gone too. Strange, she thought. That evening, Lisa sat at her kitchen table reviewing Ethan's file again. There was barely any information about his father. Just a name, Richard, and a vague description that said he traveled frequently for business. No emergency contact except Helen's number. No mention of what he did for work. Nothing. It bothered her more than it should have. In her 6 years of teaching, she had never had a file this empty. Parents usually wanted to share everything. Medical history, likes and dislikes, favorite foods, fears, dreams. But this felt like someone was deliberately keeping information hidden. Lisa pulled out her laptop and did something she rarely did. She searched Ethan's last name combined with the city they lived in. What popped up made her freeze. Articles, dozens of them. Photos of a man in expensive suits standing next to tech company logos. Headlines about billion-dollar deals and innovations that changed industries. And there, in one of the photos, was a face she would soon come to know very well. Ethan's father wasn't just some businessman who traveled a lot. He was Richard Chen, one of the wealthiest men in the country. And for some reason, he was keeping his identity secret from the school. Lisa closed her laptop, her mind racing. Why would someone that successful hide who he was? Why send an assistant instead of coming himself? And most importantly, why did a boy as talented and sweet as Ethan seem so desperately lonely? She didn't have answers yet. But as she got ready for bed that night, she made herself a promise. Whatever was going on in Ethan's life, whatever secrets his family was keeping, she would be there for him. Because that's what teachers did. They showed up. They cared. They saw the child, not the circumstances. And Lisa had a feeling that Ethan needed someone to truly see him more than any student she had ever taught. What she didn't know was that someone had been watching her too. Someone who sat in that black car every single day, listening through a hidden device, watching through carefully placed cameras, seeing every smile she brought to his son's face. Someone who was about to realize that money couldn't buy what his son needed most. But maybe, just maybe, he was finally ready to learn how to give it. 3 weeks had passed since Ethan joined Lisa's class, and every single day had been amazing. The quiet, careful boy she met on that first morning was slowly opening up. He laughed more now. He talked about the music he loved, the books he enjoyed, and sometimes, just sometimes, he would share a memory of his mother. But there was one thing that troubled Lisa more with each passing day. Ethan's father never came to school. Not once. The parent-teacher conference was scheduled for Thursday evening at 6. Lisa had prepared everything. She had charts showing Ethan's incredible progress, samples of his braille work, and recordings of the beautiful music he had composed during their sessions. She was excited to share how special his son was. At exactly 6 o'clock, there was a knock on her classroom door. Lisa looked up with a smile, ready to finally meet Richard Chen in person. But when the door opened, it was Helen who walked in, carrying a leather portfolio and wearing the same professional expression she always had. "Good evening, Miss Lisa," Helen said, taking a seat across from her desk. "I'm here for Ethan's conference." Lisa tried to hide her disappointment. "Oh, I was hoping to meet Ethan's father. Is he running late?" Helen's expression didn't change. "Mr. Chen is traveling for business. He sends his apologies and asked me to attend on his behalf. I'll take notes and relay everything to him." Lisa felt a spark of frustration but pushed it down. She spent the next 40 minutes going through everything with Helen, showing her all of Ethan's accomplishments, his strengths, and the few areas where he could use extra support. Helen took notes diligently, asked appropriate questions, but there was something missing. There was no pride in her eyes, no emotion when Lisa talked about how Ethan had played a song for the class and made another student cry with its beauty. When Helen left, Lisa sat alone in her classroom feeling hollow. What kind of father misses a chance to hear about his son's progress? What could possibly be more important than this? She didn't know that at that very moment Richard Chen was sitting in his car 2 blocks away, listening to every word through a small earpiece. He had heard Lisa's passion, her genuine love for teaching, and the way she spoke about Ethan like he was the most important child in the world. And when the conference ended, he sat there in the darkness, gripping his steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. hating himself for being too much of a coward to walk through that door. The next week, Lisa made a decision. If Ethan's father wouldn't come to school, she would make sure Ethan got the extra attention he deserved in other ways. She started staying late 3 days a week to give him private piano lessons. She learned that music wasn't just a hobby for Ethan. It was how he expressed everything he couldn't say with words. On Tuesday evening, as they worked on a particularly complex piece, Ethan suddenly stopped playing. "Miss Lisa, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart. Anything. Do you think my dad loves me?" The question hit Lisa like a physical blow. She moved from her chair and sat next to him on the piano bench. "Ethan, why would you ask that? He's never home anymore. Even when he is, he's always on his phone or his computer. He doesn't talk to me like he used to. After Mom died, it's like he disappeared too." Lisa felt tears threatening, but held them back. She needed to be strong for this boy. Sometimes when people lose someone they love very much, they don't know how to handle the pain. They bury themselves in work or other things because it hurts too much to face what they've lost. But that doesn't mean they don't love you. I promise you, your dad loves you. Then why doesn't he show it? Ethan's voice cracked. I'd give up everything, all the fancy things, the big house, everything, just to have dinner with him like we used to, just to hear him laugh again. Lisa wrapped her arm around his shoulders. I know, honey, I know. What she didn't know was that Richard Chen was in his car across the street, and for the first time in 2 years, he was crying. Not silent tears, but deep, broken sobs that shook his entire body. He heard his son's pain, and he realized with horrible clarity that he had been so focused on not feeling his own grief that he had completely abandoned the one person who needed him most. As the weeks turned into a month, Lisa noticed something else. That black car was always there. Every morning when she arrived, every evening when she left late with Ethan. At first she thought maybe it was security that Richard had hired to watch over his son. But there was something about it that felt more personal. One Friday evening, Lisa and Ethan were the last ones in the school. They had been working on a surprise piece for the upcoming autumn concert. As they packed up, Lisa walked Ethan to the front entrance where Helen was waiting. After they drove away, Lisa stood on the steps for a moment, enjoying the cool evening air. That's when she noticed the black car again, parked in its usual spot across the street. On impulse, she decided to walk toward it. Maybe if it was security, she could at least thank them for keeping Ethan safe. But as soon as she took 3 steps in that direction, the car's engine started and it pulled away quickly, disappearing around the corner. Lisa stood there confused. Why would they drive away? Unless they weren't supposed to be noticed. That weekend, Lisa couldn't stop thinking about Ethan. She thought about his loneliness, his incredible talent, and his desperate wish for his father's attention. She thought about that black car and the strange way information about Richard Chen was kept so secret. On Sunday afternoon, she did something she had never done before. She drove to the address listed in Ethan's emergency file. She told herself she just wanted to see where he lived, to understand his world a little better. Maybe it would help her figure out how to help him. The address led her to a gated estate in the wealthiest part of the city. The gates were tall, made of ornate iron, and through them she could see a mansion that looked like something from a magazine. There were perfectly manicured gardens, a fountain, and more cars in the driveway than most people owned in a lifetime. Lisa sat in her modest sedan, staring at the gates, feeling the huge gap between her world and Ethan's. This boy had everything money could buy. But he didn't have the one thing that mattered. He didn't have his father's time. She was about to drive away when the gates suddenly opened. A black car emerged, and for just a brief moment Lisa saw the driver's face. It was a man, probably in his late 30s, with dark hair and tired eyes. He wore an expensive suit, and even from a distance she could see the exhaustion written all over his features. Their eyes met for just a second. Lisa saw something in his expression, a flash of surprise, maybe even fear, before he quickly looked away and drove past her. She sat there for a long moment, her heart pounding. Something told her that wasn't just any driver or security guard. Something about those eyes felt familiar, though she had never seen him before. When Lisa got home that evening, she pulled out her laptop again and looked at the photos of Richard Chen she had found weeks ago. She zoomed in on his face, studying his features. And then it hit her. The man in that car had the same eyes as Ethan, the same shape of his face, the same way he held his shoulders. That wasn't a security guard. That was Richard Chen himself. And he had been sitting in that car, watching the school, watching his son every single day. But why? Why would a father watch from a distance instead of just being there? What was he so afraid of? Lisa closed her laptop, her mind spinning with questions. She didn't have answers, but she knew one thing for certain. Something was very wrong in that beautiful mansion, and Ethan, that sweet, talented, lonely boy, was caught in the middle of it. She made a decision right then. Whatever was happening, whatever secrets this family was keeping, she wasn't going to give up on Ethan. She would be there for him, every single day, giving him the attention and love he deserved. Because sometimes, the most important thing a teacher can do isn't just teach. It's show up. It's care. It's be the person who stays when everyone else leaves. And Lisa was ready to stay for as long as Ethan needed her. The autumn concert was only 2 weeks away, and the entire school buzzed with excitement. Students practiced their performances during every spare moment, and the hallways echoed with music and laughter. But for Lisa, the concert had become something more than just a school event. It was Ethan's chance to shine, to show everyone the incredible gift he had. She had been working with him on a special piece, something he had composed himself. It was beautiful and emotional, telling a story without words about loss, hope, and finding light in darkness. Every time he played it, Lisa felt goosebumps on her arms. "You're going to bring the house down," she told him one afternoon as they finished practice. "Your father is going to be so proud." Ethan's fingers stilled on the keys. "He's not coming." "What, did he tell you that?" "Helen said he has an important meeting overseas. He won't be back in time." Ethan's voice was flat, like he had expected this all along. Like disappointment was just another part of his daily routine. Lisa felt anger rise in her chest. What kind of meeting could possibly be more important than your son's first major performance? She wanted to call Richard Chen herself and tell him exactly what she thought, but she knew that wouldn't help Ethan. "Well then," she said, keeping her voice steady and warm, "we'll record the whole thing and make sure he sees it. And I'll be right there in the front row cheering louder than anyone else. Deal?" Ethan managed a small smile. Deal. The day of the concert arrived with chaos. The school auditorium was packed with parents, teachers, and students. The energy was electric, everyone excited to see the show. But 2 hours before the performances were supposed to start, disaster struck. The sound system completely died. No microphones, no speakers, nothing. The music teacher was in full panic mode, and the principal was making frantic phone calls to every tech person he could think of. But it was Friday evening and no one was available. Lisa stood backstage with Ethan, her mind racing. The piano didn't need the sound system, but the choir did, and so did half the other acts. If they couldn't fix this, the concert would be canceled. And Ethan had been looking forward to this for weeks. "What's happening?" Ethan asked, sensing the tension in the air. "Technical problems, honey. But don't worry, we'll figure it out." "Is the concert canceled?" His voice was small, hopeful and fearful at the same time. Before Lisa could answer, a deep voice spoke from behind them. "Mind if I take a look?" Lisa turned to see a man in an expensive navy suit standing in the wings of the stage. He was tall, with dark hair touched with gray at the temples, and eyes that looked tired but kind. There was something familiar about him, but Lisa couldn't place it. "Are you a technician?" the principal asked, grasping at any hope. "Something like that. I work with technology." "May I?" The principal gestured desperately toward the sound booth. "Please, anything you can do." The man walked past Lisa, and for just a moment his eyes landed on Ethan. Something flashed across his face, an emotion so raw and powerful that it made Lisa's breath catch. Then he was gone, climbing up to the sound booth. Lisa watched through the small window as he worked, his hands moving with confidence across the equipment. He pulled out his phone, made a quick call, and within minutes, someone delivered a small device. He connected wires, adjusted settings, and 15 minutes later, the speakers crackled to life. The entire backstage erupted in cheers and applause. The man climbed down from the booth, and the principal grabbed his hand, shaking it enthusiastically. "You're a lifesaver." "Thank you so much. Are you here for one of the students?" The man glanced toward where Ethan stood with Lisa. "Just wanted to make sure the show went on. Kids work hard for these moments." Before anyone could ask more questions, he disappeared into the crowd filling the auditorium. Lisa felt something strange in her chest. That look he had given Ethan, it wasn't the look of a stranger. It was the look of someone who knew him, who cared about him deeply. The concert began, and it was magical. Act after act, the students performed with joy and enthusiasm. Lisa sat in the front row, but she found her eyes scanning the crowd, looking for that man in the navy suit. Where had he gone? Finally, it was Ethan's turn. Lisa walked with him to the piano and made sure he was comfortable on the bench. She squeezed his shoulder gently. "You've got this. Play from your heart." "Thank you, Miss Lisa," he whispered. "For everything." Lisa returned to her seat, her eyes already filling with tears before he even started playing. When Ethan's fingers touched the keys, the entire auditorium went silent. The piece he had composed was even more beautiful in this setting. In front of all these people, it started soft and sad, like tears falling in an empty room. Then it built, growing stronger, more hopeful, like someone finding their way out of darkness. And the ending was pure light, pure joy, like a heart learning to love again after being broken. Lisa wasn't the only one crying. She could hear sniffles throughout the audience. When Ethan played the final note and the sound faded into silence, there was a moment where no one moved, no one breathed. Then the auditorium exploded with applause. People stood, clapping and cheering, and Ethan's face lit up with a smile so big and genuine that Lisa's heart felt like it might burst. She rushed up to the stage and hugged him. "You were perfect. Absolutely perfect." "Did they really like it?" Ethan asked, overwhelmed by the sound of the applause. "Like it? They loved it. Listen to them." As the applause continued, Lisa looked out into the crowd. And that's when she saw him. The man in the navy suit standing at the very back of the auditorium, half hidden in shadow. But even from that distance, even in the dim light, she could see tears streaming down his face. His hand was pressed against his mouth and his whole body shook with emotion. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and in that instant, Lisa knew with absolute certainty who he was. Richard Chen hadn't missed his son's performance. He had been here all along. He had fixed the sound system to make sure the concert happened. He had watched from the shadows, too afraid or too ashamed to reveal himself, but unable to stay away. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. Lisa saw the guilt in his eyes, the pain, the love he had for his son that he didn't know how to express. She saw a man who was broken and lost, trying to find his way back to the person who mattered most. Then someone walked in front of Lisa, breaking the eye contact, and when she looked back, Richard was gone. After the concert, parents swarmed their children with hugs and congratulations. Helen appeared to collect Ethan, praising his performance in her polite, professional way. As Lisa watched them leave, she made a decision. This had to stop. Ethan deserved better than a father who watched from the shadows. He deserved better than hollow praise delivered through an assistant. He deserved his father, present and real, even if that father was scared or grieving or broken. Lisa didn't know how she was going to make it happen, but somehow she was going to bring this family back together. Because that's what Ethan needed. Not money, not a big house, not expensive gifts, just his dad. That night, Lisa sat at her kitchen table and wrote an email. She wrote to the only contact she had, Helen's email address, but she addressed the message to Richard Chen directly. "Dear Mr. Chen," she began, "I know you were there tonight. I saw you, and I know you've been watching from that car every day. I don't understand why you're hiding, but I do understand pain and loss. I understand being afraid, but your son needs you. Not your money, not your success, not the things you can provide. He needs you, the person, the father, present and real. He's lonely, Mr. Chen. He's hurting. And the saddest part is you're hurting too. And you're both suffering alone when you could be healing together. Please, for Ethan's sake, stop hiding. He loves you. And I think you love him more than you can even express. But love means showing up, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Sincerely, Lisa. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. Then she sat in the quiet of her apartment, wondering if she had just made the biggest mistake of her teaching career. Or if maybe, just maybe, she had started something that would change all three of their lives forever. The answer would come sooner than she expected. Lisa didn't sleep much that night. She kept checking her email every hour, wondering if Richard would respond or if she had completely overstepped and would find herself in trouble on Monday morning. But when dawn broke through her window, there was still no reply. Monday came, and Lisa went through her morning routine like she always did. Coffee, shower, a quick breakfast, and the drive to school. But her stomach was in knots the entire time. What if Richard was angry? What if he pulled Ethan out of her class? What if she had made everything worse? She unlocked her classroom and turned on the lights, trying to focus on preparing for the day. Her students would arrive in 20 minutes. She needed to pull herself together. At 8:15, there was a knock on her door. Lisa looked up, expecting to see one of the other teachers. Instead, Helen stood there, her expression unreadable. "Miss Lisa, could you come with me, please? The principal needs to see you in his office." Lisa's heart sank. This was it. She was in trouble. She grabbed her phone and followed Helen down the hallway, her mind racing with worst-case scenarios. But when she walked into the principal's office, she wasn't prepared for what she saw. Principal Davis sat behind his desk, looking slightly confused. And in one of the chairs across from him sat Richard Chen, dressed in a gray suit, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "Miss Lisa, please sit down," Principal Davis said. "Mr. Chen has requested to speak with you." "Helen, could you give us some privacy?" Helen nodded and left, closing the door behind her. The silence in the room was thick and uncomfortable. Richard turned to look at Lisa for the first time since she entered. Up close, she could see the exhaustion etched into his face, the dark circles under his eyes. But more than that, she could see something else. Vulnerability, fear, and a deep, overwhelming sadness. "I'll leave you two to talk," Principal Davis said, clearly sensing this was personal. "Take your time." When the principal left, it was just Lisa and Richard sitting 3 feet apart but feeling like miles. Richard spoke first, his voice rough like he had been crying. "I got your email." "I'm sorry if I overstepped," Lisa began, but he held up his hand. "No, don't apologize. You're the first person in 2 years who has had the courage to tell me the truth." He took a shaky breath. "I saw you. At the concert. I saw you watching me and I knew you had figured it out." "Why?" Lisa asked, her voice gentle but firm. "Why have you been hiding? Why watch from a distance instead of just being there for him?" Richard's hands trembled as he clasped them together. For a moment, Lisa thought he wasn't going to answer. Then quietly, he began to speak. "My wife died 2 years ago. Cancer. We knew it was coming, but knowing doesn't make it easier. Doesn't make it hurt less." His voice cracked. "She was everything to us. To me and Ethan. She was the heart of our family, the light in our home. When she died, that light went out, and I didn't know how to turn it back on." Lisa felt tears burning in her eyes but stayed silent, letting him continue. "I threw myself into work because it was the only thing that made sense anymore. Numbers, deals, technology, those things have rules. They're predictable. But grief? Raising a son alone? Being strong when you feel like you're falling apart? I didn't know how to do any of that." He wiped his eyes roughly. "I told myself I was providing for him, giving him the best of everything. But the truth is I was just running away. Running from the pain. Running from the guilt." "Guilt?" Lisa asked softly. "I wasn't there when she died," Richard said, and the words seemed to tear out of him. "I was on a business trip. She made me go, said the company needed me, that she would be fine for a few days. But she wasn't fine. She died while I was on a plane and Ethan was alone with the nurse. My son said goodbye to his mother without me there, and I will never forgive myself for that." A tear rolled down Lisa's cheek. "Richard, that wasn't your fault, wasn't it? I chose work over being there, and I've been making that same choice every day since. I watch him from that car because I'm terrified that if I get close again, if I let myself love him the way I should, I'll lose him too. And I can't survive that. I can't lose another person I love. So instead, you're losing him slowly," Lisa said, her voice breaking. "You're losing him to loneliness and sadness, and he doesn't understand why his father disappeared. He thinks you don't love him anymore. Richard's face crumpled. I heard him say that. When he asked you if I loved him. I was in the car listening and I heard every word. I heard him say he would give up everything just to have dinner with me. And I sat there hating myself, knowing I was destroying the one person I would die to protect. Then why didn't you come inside? Why didn't you just walk through that door? Because I'm a coward, Richard whispered. I'm a coward who's so afraid of pain that I've caused more pain than I ever could have prevented. And the worst part is, I've been watching you with him. I've seen how you make him smile, how patient you are, how much you care. You've been more of a parent to my son these past 2 months than I've been in 2 years. And that's unforgivable. Lisa reached across the space between them and put her hand on his. It's not unforgivable. You're here now. That's what matters. Why is it too late? Richard asked, looking at her with desperate, broken eyes. Have I ruined everything? Will he even want me anymore? He talks about you all the time, Lisa said. He tells me about how you used to help him with math, how you would play violin while he played piano, how you used to make pancakes on Sunday mornings in funny shapes. He remembers all of it, Richard. He remembers who you were before the grief swallowed you, and he's waiting for that person to come back. Richard covered his face with his hands and sobbed, not quiet, dignified tears, but deep, gut-wrenching sobs that shook his entire body. Lisa moved to the chair next to him and put her arm around his shoulders, letting him cry. Letting him finally release 2 years of bottled-up pain. When he finally calmed down, he looked at her with red, swollen eyes. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to be the father he needs. You start small, Lisa said. You start by showing up. Really showing up, not watching from a car. You have dinner with him. You ask about his day. You listen to him play piano. You make mistakes and you apologize and you try again. That's what being a parent is. What if I fail? What if I'm not enough? Then you fail and you try again. But Richard, right now you're not trying at all. And that's the only real failure. Lisa squeezed his hand. He doesn't need you to be perfect. He just needs you to be present. Richard nodded slowly, wiping his face with his sleeve. I want to see him. Not through cameras or from a car. I want to actually see my son. Then let's make that happen, Lisa said. That afternoon, Lisa made arrangements with Principal Davis. Instead of Helen picking up Ethan, Richard would come. But they decided not to tell Ethan in advance. They didn't want to disappoint him if Richard lost his nerve at the last minute. At 3 o'clock, Lisa walked Ethan to the front entrance like she always did. But instead of Helen's car, there was a different vehicle waiting. And standing beside it was Richard, looking more nervous than any billionaire had ever looked in the history of the world. Ethan, Lisa said softly, someone's here to pick you up today. Ethan tilted his head, confused. Where's Helen? I gave her the day off, a voice said. A voice Ethan hadn't heard in so long, not directed at him, not filled with love and attention. Ethan froze. His grip on Lisa's hand tightened. Dad? Yeah, buddy, it's me. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Ethan's lips started trembling and tears spilled down his cheeks. You came? I came, Richard said, his own voice breaking. I'm sorry I've been gone so long. I'm sorry for everything. But I'm here now and I'm not going anywhere ever again. I promise. Ethan dropped his cane and ran toward his father's voice. He crashed into Richard's arms and Richard caught him, holding him so tight it looked like he would never let go. Both of them were crying, clinging to each other like they were the only two people in the world. Lisa stood back, her own tears flowing freely, watching a family begin to heal. I missed you so much. Ethan sobbed into his father's chest. I missed you so much, Dad. I missed you too, son. Every single day. I was just too scared and too stupid to show it. But that changes now. Everything changes now. Lisa wiped her eyes and quietly walked back into the school, giving them privacy. As she looked back one last time, she saw Richard kneeling in front of Ethan, holding his face in his hands, talking to him with an intensity and love that had been missing for too long. Sometimes, she thought, the greatest gift you can give someone isn't teaching them math or reading. Sometimes it's showing them that it's never too late to come home. 3 months had passed since that tearful reunion in the school parking lot, and Lisa could hardly believe the transformation she had witnessed. The change hadn't happened overnight. It was gradual, built on small moments and daily choices, but it was real and beautiful and everything Ethan had been hoping for. Richard started showing up to school every single day. Not in a black car across the street, but right at the entrance, waiting to pick up his son. The first few times, other parents stared. After all, it wasn't every day that one of the richest men in the country stood in the pickup line like everyone else. But Richard didn't care about the stares or the whispers. He only cared about seeing his son's face light up when he heard his father's voice. They had dinner together every night now. Richard made sure of it. He had stepped back from the daily operations of his company, promoting his most trusted executive to CEO, while he took on a chairman role that required far less of his time. Some business magazines called it a shocking move. Financial analysts debated whether it was wise, but Richard didn't care about any of that. He had spent 2 years choosing his company over his son, and he would spend the rest of his life making up for it. Lisa watched it all unfold with a heart so full it sometimes felt like it might overflow. She saw the way Ethan walked taller now, smiled easier, laughed louder. The sad, lonely boy she had met months ago was slowly disappearing, replaced by a confident, joyful child who knew without a doubt that he was loved. But the most surprising development was the relationship that had formed between Lisa and Richard. What started as conversations about Ethan's progress had evolved into something deeper. They talked about life, loss, healing, and hope. Richard started volunteering at the school 1 day a week, helping with the music program. He had been a talented violinist in his younger years, before business consumed his life, and he rediscovered his love for it while working with the students. Lisa found herself looking forward to those days more than she wanted to admit. There was something about Richard that drew her in. Maybe it was the way he had fought his way back from darkness. Maybe it was the gentle way he treated every student, not just his son. Or maybe it was simply that underneath the expensive suits and the billionaire status, he was just a man trying his best to be better, and she respected that more than anything. One Tuesday afternoon in early spring, Richard knocked on Lisa's classroom door after school. She looked up from the papers she was grading and smiled. "Hey, Ethan's at his piano lesson with Mr. Anderson. Thought I'd come see if you needed any help." "I'm just grading some assignments," Lisa said. "Nothing exciting." Richard walked in and sat on the edge of one of the student desks. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. The spring concert is coming up. And I was thinking—" He paused, looking nervous in a way that made Lisa's heart skip. "Ethan and I have been working on a duet. Him on piano, me on violin, and we'd like to perform it. But there's one condition." "What's that?" "We want you to introduce us. To stand on that stage and tell everyone about the amazing work you do. Not just with Ethan, but with all your students. You deserve recognition, Lisa. You changed our lives, and I think people should know that." Lisa felt her cheeks flush. "Richard, I was just doing my job." "No," he said firmly, standing up and walking closer to her desk. "You went so far beyond your job. You saw a lonely kid and you gave him your time. You saw a broken father and you had the courage to tell him the truth, even when it could have cost you everything. You didn't have to do any of that. But you did because you care, because you're extraordinary." The way he looked at her in that moment made Lisa's breath catch. There was something in his eyes that went beyond gratitude, beyond friendship, something that made her realize their connection had grown into something neither of them had planned. "I'll introduce you," she said softly. "I'd be honored." The night of the spring concert arrived with perfect weather, and an auditorium packed even fuller than the autumn show. Word had spread that Richard Chen, the tech billionaire who had basically vanished from public life for 2 years, was going to perform with his son. People were curious, excited, and the energy in the room was electric. Lisa stood backstage with Ethan and Richard, both of whom looked nervous but happy. Ethan held his father's hand, something he did often now, needing that physical connection to remind himself this was real, that his dad was truly here. "You two are going to be amazing," Lisa said, straightening Richard's tie even though it didn't need straightening. "What if I mess up?" Ethan asked. "Then you keep playing," Richard said, squeezing his hand. "That's what your mom always told me. The music doesn't stop because of one wrong note. You just keep going and most people never even notice." Ethan smiled. "I wish she could see this." "I think she can," Richard said, his voice thick with emotion. "And I think she's proud of both of us for finally finding our way back to each other." Lisa's cue came and she walked onto the stage. The applause was warm and welcoming, and she took a moment to look out at all the faces in the crowd. Parents, teachers, students, and community members all gathered to celebrate these kids and their talents. Good evening, everyone, Lisa began. Before we introduce our final performance of the night, I want to talk about what teaching really means. It's not just about textbooks and tests. It's about seeing potential in every child, even when they can't see it themselves. It's about showing up, day after day, because you believe these kids deserve every opportunity to shine. She paused, gathering her thoughts. Tonight you're going to witness something special. A father and son who found their way back to each other through music, through love, and through the courage to be vulnerable. Ethan came into my classroom months ago, and he taught me that sometimes the most important thing we can do is simply be present for each other. His father, Richard, taught me that it's never too late to change, to heal, to become the person you're meant to be. Lisa felt her voice catch, but pushed through. So please welcome to the stage, Ethan and Richard Chen, performing an original piece composed by Ethan, titled Coming Home. The applause was thunderous as Ethan and Richard walked onto the stage. Richard guided his son to the piano bench, then took his position with his violin. They looked at each other, father and son, sharing a moment of silent communication that needed no words. Then they began to play. The piece started with just the piano, soft, tentative notes that sounded like someone lost and searching. Then the violin joined in, a stronger voice answering the piano's questions, guiding it, supporting it. The two instruments wove together, sometimes in harmony, sometimes in counterpoint, telling a story of separation and reunion, of pain and healing, of a love that survived even the darkest times. Lisa watched from the side of the stage, tears streaming down her face. She wasn't alone. All around the auditorium, people were crying, moved by the raw emotion pouring from that stage. This wasn't just a performance. It was a father and son, laying their hearts bare, showing everyone what it meant to fight your way back from the edge of losing everything that mattered. The final notes hung in the air, and for a heartbeat there was complete silence. Then the auditorium erupted. People didn't just clap. They stood, they cheered, they wiped their eyes and clapped harder. It went on for minutes, wave after wave of appreciation and love. Richard knelt beside Ethan at the piano, and they embraced, both of them crying and laughing at the same time. Lisa couldn't help herself. She walked onto the stage and joined them, wrapping her arms around both of them, and they held on like they were the only three people in the world. Later that night, after the concert ended and the crowds dispersed, Richard found Lisa packing up her things in the auditorium. "Thank you," he said simply, "for everything, for seeing Ethan, for seeing me, for not giving up on either of us." "You don't have to thank me," Lisa said. "Yes, I do. Because you gave me my son back, you gave me my life back." He stepped closer, his expression soft and hopeful. "And I was wondering if maybe you'd like to have dinner with us this weekend. Not as Ethan's teacher, but as someone we both care about very much. Someone who's become part of our family." Lisa felt warmth spread through her chest. "I'd love that." "Good," Richard said, smiling in a way that made him look 10 years younger. "Because Ethan's already planning the menu, and fair warning, it involves pancakes in funny shapes." Lisa laughed, a sound full of joy and hope and new beginnings. "That sounds perfect." As she drove home that night, Lisa thought about how strange and beautiful life could be. She had started this school year expecting nothing more than to teach, to help her students learn and grow. She never imagined she would help heal a broken family. She never imagined she would become part of that family herself. But that was the thing about showing up, about caring, about being present. You never knew whose life you might change, and sometimes, in the process of changing someone else's life, you discovered that your own life had been changed too. Ethan had his father back. Richard had found his way home. And Lisa had found something she hadn't even known she was looking for, a place where she belonged with people who saw her not just as a teacher, but as someone extraordinary. Because that's what love does. It sees people. It shows up. It stays, even when things are hard. And it believes, always and forever, that no one is ever too broken to heal. And it's never too late to come home.